For centuries, knowledge has been hidden in plain sight across the sands of time. Whispers of lost civilizations, cryptic symbols, and forbidden histories have been erased or concealed. What if the truth was never lost, but hidden? Welcome to Eye of Ancient Mysteries, where the past speaks and the future listens. Sit back, open your mind, and prepare to uncover the untold secrets of our world. Let the journey begin now. In the last hour of the flight, Early swore so much that if you strung his curses together, they would stretch for at least several parsecs. I understood him completely, though. The planetary fuel was running low. We hadn't received any signals permitting us to land, and beneath us were endless forests. It wasn't easy for me either, because it turned out that the Earth's axis was oriented with respect to the Sun not as it should have been, and the landing calculations, made timely by the analyzer, were useless. Arson Salad's was lucky. He sat at his console with his back to the commander, not seeing Muller's furious glares. "Just a little longer early," I said. "Maybe I'll be able to adjust the angle using the North Star." "All right," Muller said. "I'll wait, but you'll lend me 300 tons of fuel in return." He stood up and pulled the lever to engage the braking engine. I don't quite remember what happened next, because I can't stand the vibrations during landing. When I came to our Recon, was already rocking on its shock absorbers. "We've arrived," Early said. Flames were raging around the rocket. Silads took off his headphones and walked over to the commander. "You rushed, Early. There must be a spaceport somewhere." "It's all right," Muller said. "It could have been worse, right, Monko?" I didn't answer because I had started hiccuping. "Drink some water," Early said. "It's nothing, just nerves," I said. Arson turned on the external fire extinguishers. The onboard nozzles shot out streams of yellow foam, which began to put out the burning branches. "How are you feeling, Momko?" Early asked. I hiccuped a few more times. "Stop hiccuping," he said. "You can't stop it for a lifetime." "So, what are we doing now?" Arson asked. "Gas 5 full hours. Can you handle it?" "Talik." "I hope so," I said. "We'd better wait." It seemed to me that Early was pleased with the delay in the disinfection process. "You lie down, and Arson and I will shave." Arson hummed. Asking Salads to shave his beard is like asking a peacock to sell its tail. Early pulled out his shaving kit and various little bottles from a drawer in the console. He always performed this ritual with great solemnity. I thought the commander was deliberately delaying the exit from the rocket so that we could reflect on the main issue. During the flight, we hadn't had time for that. "There's no need to hurry," he said, looking at his chin in the mirror. "They've been waiting for 4 centuries. They'll wait a bit longer." "Well, they waited," Salad said. "We're really crucial to them." "Aha, here it comes. I thought—" "And your opinion, Momko?" "They need us," I said. "Why would any civilization give up such exhibits? We're basically for the museum. And here, children, are the primitive people who inhabited our planet in the 21st century. And here are the primitive tools they used. A spacecraft with annihilation engines and a planetary reconnaissance robot. Go on, Momko. Tell them about the beard. I will. Notice the underdeveloped temples of one of them, and remember what I told you about the evolution of Homo sapiens. Rubbish, Early said. Man hasn't changed since time immemorial, and our descendants from the 65th century. Man changes slowly. Arson interrupted him. But humanity as a whole has changed a lot, and technology is advancing quickly. It's terrifying to imagine what they must have invented in those 44 centuries. All right, then, Early said. We'll manage with the technology. Let's start the disinfection. I lay on the bunk with my face to the wall. My soul was heavy. I knew it would be like this. After all, we had agreed to it ourselves. No one had forced us. It was just that until now we hadn't had time to think about all these things. Can you think about the fate of humanity when you're trying to save your skin, shooting giant spiders with a laser, or destroying blood-sucking cactus plantations? You can't think in the cryo chamber either. I turned to the other side. Not sleeping? Monko? Early was lying on his back. From the expression on his face, I realized that he was thinking about the same thing. I don't feel like sleeping. Tell me, Early, are we really going to look like pithecanthropes to them? I don't think so, Momko. 44 centuries is, of course, a long time, but after all, we represent a highly developed civilization. Don't forget about the continuity of culture. Would Aristotle appear like a savage to our contemporaries? I couldn't help but imagine what Aristotle would have looked like if he had ended up on our Recon. All right? I said, we'll see. Look, Early said. I must have fallen asleep because when I opened my eyes, Early was examining samples from the atmosphere, and Arson was tinkering with something on the PIR. Remove its weapon, Early said. There's no one here to fight. Let's hope so, Arson replied. Muller extracted another air sample. Just a minute, guys, he said, adjusting the flask device. One more biological sample, and we can go. For the first time, I saw Early's hands tremble. I probably didn't look much better myself. Tesselad's dismantled the anti-proton emitter from the PAR and left it on the floor next to the machine gun. Deprived of its deadly weapons, our planetary reconnaissance robot looked quite docile. The robot will go first, Muller said, opening the hatch. Before I went out, I looked at the Earth time on the electronic calendar. It showed January 12, 6416. We had made a big mess during landing. The trees around the rocket were scorched and covered in dried foam. It was very hot. Arson shielded his eyes with his hand and looked through his fingers at the sun. His beard was pointing straight up at the sky. Tell me, Early, where did we land? He asked. It seems like Earth, Early replied calmly. I take it it's not the moon. I'm interested in the latitude at which we've landed. Early shrugged. Ask him. He calculated the landing incredibly precisely. I swallowed the biting remark. Somewhere between the 35th and 38th parallels, I said. Early smiled, and with malicious glee, I decided to return the favor. If Early hadn't rushed the landing, I said nonchalantly, you would have received data on the new position of Earth's axis. Now I can only say that it deviates very slightly from the perpendicular to the ecliptic plane. Arson whistled. Right, I see, Early said. Eternal summer. Sorry, Momko, for the silly joke. You really are a magnificent navigator. I don't know how serious he was, but I sweated with excitement, because Early's praise means more to me than anything in the world. In fact, Early is the kind of person I would jump into fire for without hesitation. Arson is also a good comrade and very brave, but I like Early more. Silads glanced around uneasily and suddenly spoke with a dramatic tone. People capable of doing this knew what they were doing. Muller interrupted. Early couldn't stand it when anyone got emotional. Still, it's interesting. Where are the people themselves? I asked. The fire had died down, and we walked through the forest on the green grass. I don't know if I've ever breathed such fresh air. Suddenly, the PR stopped and raised its hand. Ahead was a meadow. Honestly, I almost burst into tears when I saw a group of young men and women in shorts and bright shirts. When I left Earth, I was only 12, and I hadn't yet seen anyone my age. Early waved at them. They smiled and waved back, but they seemed somewhat confused. We took a few steps toward them, and fear appeared on their faces. Strange behavior for such a meeting, I thought. Were the crew of the spacecraft Recon? Early shouted to them. We left Earth on March 7, 2243. We landed tonight at 2:10 a.m., not far from here. The Earthling's smiles widened, but the distance between us increased. I don't know how much longer we would have exchanged smiles like that if a rosy-cheeked man hadn't appeared from the forest, riding a giant ant. The PIR stood up. It had personal issues with the insects. The ant stood up too and threateningly moved its mandibles. "Get that robot away!" the rosy-cheeked man shouted. "It's unarmed," Arson replied. "Take your ant away." "The ant isn't at fault. I just fear robots." PLAR, back to the cabin, Early commanded. For the first time, I saw PLR obey our command so reluctantly. The rosy-cheeked man waited for the robot to disappear, dismounted from the ant, and walked toward us. We stood at attention. Finally, the long-awaited solemn moment of our meeting had arrived. Early's report was simply magnificent. The rosy-cheeked man listened with his arms held close to his body, shifting from foot to foot. His face bore an expression of someone struggling to recall something. "I welcome you, conquerors of the starry expanse," he began hesitantly. "Proud, Skokoli of the cosmos." I wasn't sure what Skokoli meant. Perhaps he meant falcons. He moved his lips silently for a few more moments, then seemingly decided that the formalities were over and began embracing each of us in turn. "I can't tell you how happy I am that you've arrived," Let's introduce ourselves. Flavius, historian. This was much better than any speech. As soon as PLAR left, the distrust toward us disappeared. We were surrounded by cheerful and welcoming people. During the night, we transmitted landing instructions through all telepathic channels, said a tall, long-legged girl. But it seems your ship's hull doesn't allow telepathic waves to pass through. Arson shot a meaningful glance at Early. Yes, of course, he said. It doesn't. Where shall we start? Flavius asked. Would you like to rest first? No, thank you, Early replied. Why must first decide where to deliver the materials from our expedition? Surely you have some kind of institute for studying space. Flavius's face displayed utter confusion. Materials, he repeated, glancing at his fellow citizens. Is there a cosmologist among you? After a brief commotion, a freckle-faced boy of about 15 stepped forward. Scout, he asked, blushing deeply. The expedition to the third planet of Tau Ceti in the Cetus constellation. Its mass equals 3/4 of Earth's mass. The distance to its central star at perigee is 300 million kilometers. It completes one orbit around the star in 3.5 Earth years. Its day lasts as long as 2 Earth days. The fauna consists mainly of insects, the flora. For the next 10 minutes, he bombarded us with endless data. I watched Early and wondered how he managed to maintain that calm, attentive expression. The second expedition to Tau Ceti, the boy continued like a machine gun, launched from Earth 1,000 years after Scout and returned 1,000 years ago. They had more advanced engines. The second expedition brought back the marker left on the planet by Scout's crew. Poor Early! He had given everything he could for Scout, everything a person from Earth could sacrifice. I see, he said. Are the reports from that expedition preserved? The boy shrugged. They are in my hereditary memory. I come from a lineage of cosmologists. Arson started to say something, then changed his mind and let out a sound that resembled a duck's quack. And now? Early asked, what kind of ships do you use for space travel? Honestly, I didn't see what was so funny about the question, but the young cosmologist burst into an outright laugh. It was as if someone had asked whether they traveled on broomsticks. No, he finally said after composing himself. We can't afford to waste that much energy. We study space using colloids. Besides, the universal theory of matter's evolution allows us to create annulatory projections for any sector of the metagalaxy. I glanced at Early. Don't lose heart, kid. It's not that bad, his eyes seemed to say. Colloids, Sea-Lads mused. Those are. Come, I'll show you, the boy said with relief. We walked no more than 100 steps before we saw a massive transparent sphere filled with a glowing pink liquid. Inside, a gray mass about 2 meters in diameter floated, covered in numerous appendages. A colloid is an artificial brain that receives radio waves. It processes all the information coming from space and feeds it into the global telepathic network. There are around 2,000 colloids on Earth. We use them as a medium for worldwide telepathic communication. That's enough, Flavius interrupted. Our guests must be starving. Let's go eat. But first, he eyed us critically from head to toe. You're not dressed for our climate. We were, indeed, sweating profusely in our thick uniforms. Compared to the brightly dressed crowd surrounding us, we looked like drab, miserable goblins. Flavius led us to a few low buildings scattered among sparse trees. A small black-eyed woman approached us. "How's your hand, Joanna?" Flavius asked. Joanna smiled coyly and stretched out both arms. Her right hand was slightly shorter than her left. "It's growing. Soon I'll be able to play the harp again." Arson muttered something under his breath. I only caught the word salamanders. I can't say their factories left a strong impression on me. Dark, low buildings with strange vats dug directly into the ground. Inside, something hissed and bubbled unpleasantly. Flavius stirred one vat with a long hook and pulled out a bundle of shorts. Then he performed the same maneuver in the next vat, retrieving an assortment of colorful shirts. From a third he fished out sandals. "Change into these," he said. You should have seen the pleading look Silads gave him to understand just how uncomfortable it was for a 21st century man with a rather sizable belly to strip in front of a crowd that was half women. But every era has its own standards of decency, and Arson, cringing with embarrassment, endured his walk to Golgotha. Early and I bore our burden more bravely, but to be honest, I would have preferred a fight with the spiders over this ordeal. To make matters worse, the clothes weren't even completely dry. A strange way to store clothing, Arson remarked, smoothing his beard. In his new attire he looked rather impressive. "They're not stored here," Flavius said. "They're produced from carbon dioxide and atmospheric moisture. Bacterial nucleotide synthesis. I wasn't entirely sure what that meant." In the next building, we saw several ants retrieving pink tiles from a similar vat and stacking them on the floor. But that was nothing compared to what we saw in the third building. I can't complain about space food, but even now my mouth waters when I remember those aromas. I never imagined food could smell so divine. "Is this synthetic?" Arson asked. The look in his eyes reminded me of the hungry spiders on Spira. "Yes," Flavius said. "Now you'll get to taste it." We walked past small pink villas spaced widely apart in the forest. Along the way, we frequently saw giant ants carrying the same tiles we had seen earlier. On a nearby clearing, several ants were building a house from those tiles. "Are they a specially bred species?" Arson asked. Flavius nodded. "How do you train them?" "Modify their genetic code. I don't see any machines." Early observed. "What kind of machines would you expect to see?" "At least transportation. You can't travel the entire globe on these ants." "Why would we travel?" Flavius seemed confused. "Well, say you wanted to live somewhere else." The historian thought for a moment. "That necessity hardly ever arises," he said uncertainly. Conditions in all living zones are absolutely identical. Early insisted, then how do you gather for meetings, for scientific conferences? Someone behind us burst into laughter. Congresses. Flavius repeated, why would we gather for congresses when we have global telepathic communication? I see. Early, Arson said irritably. They don't have any transportation. None at all. It's pointless to ask. We do have transportation, said the man walking beside him. We have biotriangular spatial transfer, but almost no one uses it. It consumes too much energy and negatively affects the nervous system. I swear, I had no idea what kind of transfer that was. We'll have plenty of time to talk about everything, Flavius said. Here is my home. He made a strange chirping sound, and in response to his call, ants came scurrying over, bringing pink tables from somewhere and arranging them on the clearing. I swear, I had never attended such an astonishing feast before. Imagine tables set under the trees, illuminated by the strange glow of phosphorescent liquids in our glasses. Strange dishes with indescribable flavors, served on enormous trays carried by ants, and the lively, cheerful faces of people who were separated from our era by 44 centuries. To the health of the cosmonauts, Flavius said, raising his glass filled with a dark beverage that resembled beer. Arson stood up and delivered a long, somewhat convoluted toast. The blonde beauty sitting next to him never took her admiring gaze off his beard. Clearly, this feature was unknown to our descendants. The cosmonaut has caught Ella's fancy, Flavius remarked. Perhaps not every woman from our time would have been embarrassed by such a comment, but what followed went far beyond the modesty standards of the 21st century. The young woman gently stroked Arson's cheek and, with the most innocent expression, said, I want to have a child with him so that it will be born with one of these. I can't even describe the enthusiasm her words provoked among those present. Saladz sat there, red as a beet, while I thought about how much older we were than these people, each one younger than the great-grandchildren of our great-grandchildren, though I was getting ahead of myself since I didn't have any great-grandchildren yet. The woman sitting to my right glanced enviously at Arson's admirer, and several times looked at my own lightly bearded cheeks with something like regret. When did you launch? Flavius asked once the excitement had died down a bit. On March 7th, 2043, Early replied. Flavius did some quick calculations in his head. That means 5 years after the great battle between humans and robots, correct? I was so shocked that I hiccuped. That always happens when I'm really shaken. Arson's mouth fell open. Only Early remained perfectly calm. The 2030s and 2040s. Flavius continued dreamily. Such a difficult yet romantic era. Wars with extraterrestrial invaders, rebellions of the test tube born. Dinosaur hunting? Have you been dinosaur hunting? Arson's neighbor whispered breathlessly. What do they look like? Tell me. On Arson's face, I could clearly see the struggle between a human's eternal pursuit of truth and the allure of those blue eyes. Hem. Dinosaurs, he said after a moment's hesitation. They stand on their hind legs, bang, bang. That was apparently the full extent of Saladzy's knowledge of prehistoric animals. He was far more familiar with 2-meter long spiders capable of draining an elephant's blood in minutes. "Tell me," Early asked cautiously, "where do you get such detailed information about the 21st century?" Flavius chuckled. "I have at my disposal," he said smugly, "the richest collection of 21st century manuscripts discovered by the ants during excavations of an ancient city." "Very interesting," Early said. "Another glass of muscora?" Flavius offered. "When we first arrived," Arson said later when we were alone. "We thought we'd find marvels of technology." "But they live in forests, wear shorts, ride ants, and barely seem to use fire. A biological era," Early mused. "Who would have guessed? But really, why would they need all our technology? Humans created machines to compensate for their lack of adaptation to nature. These people haven't just changed nature, they've changed themselves. And they do have their own technology. It's just different and probably no worse than ours. But where do they get these strange ideas about the past?" I asked. Early spread his hands. "I don't know. Go check out those manuscripts, Momko." Flavius was delighted. Come in," he welcomed me, standing up. "These 2 shelves are at your disposal. To be honest, I'm hoping you can help me clarify a few things. Unfortunately, time spares even the most immortal creations of human genius. Many of these pages have decayed. And besides, the system of recording with words isn't easy to decipher, even for the Corloids. A great deal about your era is still a mystery to us. After all, knowledge has only been passed down hereditarily since the 35th century. So the earlier history of humanity is poorly studied." Yes, Flavius was truly a historian. Only a scholar driven by a passion for research could call these torn, half-decayed pages manuscripts. Then again, the ancient Egyptian papyri that scholars of my time puzzled over probably didn't look much better. Most of the pages were so faded that I could barely piece together their meaning from scattered phrases. If it weren't for the surviving illustrations here and there, I wouldn't have understood anything at all. Clearly, their Corloids possessed far greater analytical capabilities than the human brain. I spent over 2 hours in the library. When I returned, Early and Arson had already gone to bed. "Well, what do you have to tell us, Momko?" Early asked. "It's literature. Definitely from the 21st century," I replied, taking off my shirt. "But as far as I could tell, these are fragments of science fiction works, mostly written in the second half of the 20th century. A very amusing discovery, but none of us laughed. First, because their vision of the future wasn't any more fantastical than ours had been. And second, because we were finally back on our long-awaited, beloved Earth, and to be fair, we liked the people who inhabited it. As I drifted off to sleep, I wondered how many more surprises awaited us in this wonderful, slightly strange world that was now experiencing its second youth.